March 9th, 1945, 12:16 in the morning. Tokyo, Empire of Japan. The first radar stations along the eastern coast detect incoming aircraft. The signals are faint, scattered, unusual. At Imperial General Headquarters, duty officers hesitate. This does not look like a normal high-altitude bombing formation, and that hesitation will cost them the city. Because at this exact moment, over 300 aircraft from the United States Army Air Forces are already approaching at low altitude. Their target is not a factory. It is Tokyo itself. And within the next 3 hours, more than 100,000 people will die. But that was only the beginning of the problem. At 12:23 in the morning, the first wave crosses the coastline. Leading the formation is Major General Curtis LeMay. Just days earlier, he made a radical decision. High-altitude precision bombing had failed. Cloud cover, jet stream winds, poor accuracy. Bombs missed their targets. War production continued. So LeMay changed everything. He ordered the Boeing B-29 Superfortress to fly low, between 5,000 and 8,000 feet. He stripped defensive guns to reduce weight. He replaced high-explosive bombs with incendiary clusters, each bomb filled with napalm and magnesium, designed not to destroy buildings, but to burn entire districts. What happened next shocked even American planners. At 12:28 in the morning, the first Pathfinder aircraft begins marking the target. Their mission is precise: create a giant burning X across eastern Tokyo. The district is densely packed, wooden homes, paper walls, narrow streets, perfect conditions for fire. Japanese civil defense units are already under pressure. Fire brigades lack water pressure. Pumps are outdated. Communication lines are fragile. Inside Tokyo, Captain Masao Yoshida of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police hears the first reports. Unidentified aircraft, low altitude, multiple directions. This is not a standard raid. He immediately recognizes the risk. If the Americans are flying low, it means accuracy. If they are using incendiaries, it means fire. And Tokyo is not built to survive fire. At 12:35 in the morning, the first bombs fall. They do not explode. They burst open. Hundreds of small burning cylinders scatter across rooftops. Within seconds, fires begin to spread. Not isolated fires. Clusters, dozens at once. Yoshida orders all available units to respond, but already the situation is slipping out of control. At 12:47 in the morning, the second wave arrives. More B-29 aircraft, flying at altitudes as low as 6,000 feet, speeds around 200 miles per hour. They follow the burning markers, dropping thousands of incendiary clusters. The fires begin to merge. Streets become corridors of flame. Temperatures rise rapidly. Wind currents begin to shift. And then something happens that no one in Tokyo Command fully anticipated. A firestorm begins to form. At 1:02 in the morning, Japanese anti-aircraft units open sustained fire. But their guns are calibrated for high-altitude bombers. Now the targets are low, fast, and spread across a wide area. Coordination breaks down. Searchlights struggle to track individual aircraft. Night fighters are scrambled, but communication delays slow their response. Lieutenant Colonel Yoshihide Hayashi reports confusion over radio channels. Multiple formations, no clear interception point, and by the time fighters reach altitude, the bombers are already over the city, dropping fire and leaving. But this was only the beginning of the disaster. At 1:20 in the morning, Captain Yoshida moves toward the eastern districts. He sees something he will later describe as beyond imagination. Entire blocks are burning simultaneously. Civilians are fleeing, but the streets are narrow. Congestion slows movement. Fire spreads faster than people can escape. Wood ignites instantly. Paper walls vanish in seconds. Roofs collapse, and the wind is getting stronger. At 1:35 in the morning, meteorological conditions shift dramatically. Winds increase to nearly 30 miles per hour. The fires feed on oxygen. They begin to merge into a single massive inferno. This creates its own weather system. Hot air rises rapidly, drawing in cooler air from surrounding areas, which feeds the flames even more. The firestorm is now self-sustaining. Inside a command post, a senior officer reports, "This is no longer a bombing, this is annihilation." But even now they do not fully understand how bad it will become, because the real destruction is still ahead. At 1:50 in the morning, the third wave arrives. Fresh aircraft, fresh incendiaries, drop directly into an already burning city. This compounds the disaster. Firefighters can no longer distinguish separate fires. Everything is burning. Water systems fail, pipes burst, hydrants run dry, communication lines collapse. Tokyo is losing the ability to respond. And yet, one question remains. Why was the defense so unprepared for this kind of attack? And more importantly, could anything have stopped what was about to happen next? 2:03 in the morning. Eastern Tokyo is no longer a city. It is a single expanding fire, and control has already been lost. At 2:05 in the morning, Captain Masao Yoshida attempts to coordinate a response near the Sumida River. His orders are simple: create fire breaks, stop the spread. But the reality is very different. Entire districts are already burning too fast to isolate. Demolition teams cannot reach key positions. Explosives arrive too late. And even when buildings are destroyed, the wind carries burning debris across the gaps. Fire leaps over every barrier. What happens next forces a complete shift in thinking. Because this is no longer a fight against fire. It is a fight for survival. At 2:12 in the morning, thousands of civilians begin moving toward open spaces, parks, bridges, riverbanks. They believe these areas will be safe, but the firestorm behaves differently. Winds now exceed 40 miles per hour in some streets. Flames stretch across entire roads. Burning embers fall like rain. Clothing ignites instantly, and oxygen itself becomes limited in certain zones. People collapse without visible injuries. Suffocation begins to claim lives even before the flames reach them. But the real danger has not yet reached its peak. Above the city, the third wave of Boeing B-29 Superfortress aircraft completes its bombing run. Pilots report clear visual targeting. Fires are so intense they illuminate the entire city. One crew member later states, "The glow could be seen from over 100 miles away." Major General Curtis LeMay receives early reports. Bombing accuracy is higher than expected. Weather conditions are amplifying the effect. But even LeMay did not predict this level of destruction, because now the firestorm is feeding itself. At 2:28 in the morning, Lieutenant Colonel Yoshihide Hayashi reports total breakdown in air defense coordination. Night fighters from multiple units are airborne, but they cannot locate targets effectively. Smoke rises to thousands of feet. Radar becomes unreliable due to interference and clutter. Anti-aircraft batteries continue firing, but without coordination. Ammunition is being wasted, and very few bombers are actually hit. What shocked Japanese command was how ineffective their defenses had become. At 2:41 in the morning, Captain Yoshida reaches a command point near a major intersection. He observes a phenomenon rarely seen in urban warfare. Fire is moving faster than human movement. Entire streets are engulfed in seconds. People attempting to flee are overtaken. Some turn back, others run blindly into smoke. There are no clear escape routes. And then the situation becomes even more catastrophic. At 2:55 in the morning, the firestorm reaches maximum intensity. Temperatures in some areas exceed 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Wood structures ignite instantly without direct flame contact. Glass melts, metal warps. Air currents become violent. People are literally pulled toward the center of the fire. This is no longer just destruction. It is a physical force, a weapon created by heat and wind. Yoshida later reports that communication is now impossible. Messengers cannot travel. Radio signals fail, command structure collapses. Tokyo is no longer being defended, it is being consumed. At 3:07 in the morning, civilians gather along the Sumida River. Thousands enter the water to escape the flames. But the river offers only temporary relief. The air above it is still hot. Oxygen levels are still low, and burning debris continues to fall. Many drown, others succumb to heat exhaustion. The river becomes a place of desperation, not safety. Meanwhile, above the city, American crews begin exiting the target zone. Fuel consumption is lower than expected due to reduced weight. Flight paths are adjusted for return routes. Some aircraft encounter light resistance. But losses remain minimal compared to earlier high-altitude missions. This confirms LeMay's tactical gamble. Low-altitude incendiary bombing works, but at a cost that few fully grasp in that moment. At 3:20 in the morning, remaining Japanese emergency units attempt localized rescues. But resources are gone. Water systems have failed completely. Fire equipment is destroyed. Personnel are exhausted. Some units abandon positions. Others continue despite impossible conditions. One officer reports, "We are no longer saving the city. We are trying to save anyone we can find." And yet, one critical question still hangs over everything. Why did Tokyo burn so completely? The answer lies not only in the attack, but in the structure of the city itself. Tokyo in 1945 is highly vulnerable. Over 60% of residential buildings are made of wood. Roofing materials are flammable. Urban density is extremely high. Firebreak planning is limited. And previous smaller raids had not prepared the population for a coordinated firestorm attack. This combination creates the perfect conditions for total destruction. But even with these factors, there is one final phase of the disaster that will define this night. At 3:45 in the morning, the winds begin to shift again. The firestorm starts moving westward. New districts are now in its path. Areas previously untouched are about to face the same fate, and there is nothing left to stop it. So now the question becomes even more disturbing. If the fires are still spreading and the defenses are already gone, how much of Tokyo will survive by sunrise? 4:12 in the morning. Tokyo is still burning. But the firestorm has begun to move beyond its point of maximum intensity. Not because it is weakening, but because there is less left to burn. At 4:20 in the morning, Captain Masao Yoshida stands near the edge of what was once a densely populated district. Now it is unrecognizable. Entire neighborhoods have vanished. No streets, no landmarks, only ash and scattered structures still burning. He tries to orient himself, but even experienced officers cannot recognize the terrain anymore. This is one of the first signs of total urban collapse, when a city loses its identity. At 4:35 in the morning, remaining fires begin to lose intensity in the eastern sectors. Fuel has been consumed. Structures are gone. The firestorm weakens. But isolated fires continue across a wide area, and smoke blankets the city. Visibility drops to near zero at ground level. Breathing becomes difficult even for survivors, but the real scale of destruction is still hidden. At 4:50 in the morning, first organized reports begin reaching higher command. Fragments of information, unconfirmed estimates. But one phrase appears repeatedly in officer statements: beyond control. Lieutenant Colonel Yoshihide Hayashi attempts to compile a coherent picture. He cannot. Communication lines are still down. Units are missing. Command posts destroyed. There is no centralized understanding of what has happened, only scattered accounts of overwhelming fire. At 5:05 in the morning, the first light of dawn begins to break through the smoke, and with it comes the full realization of the disaster. Over 15 square miles of Tokyo have been devastated. Hundreds of thousands of structures destroyed, infrastructure collapsed, roads blocked, bridges damaged, rail lines disrupted. The city cannot function, and more importantly, it cannot defend itself against another attack. Above Japan, returning aircraft report successful mission completion. Damage appears extensive. Navigation crews mark the area as heavily burned. Major General Curtis LeMay reviews initial data. Bomb loads delivered as planned. Losses are minimal compared to previous operations. From a purely military perspective, the mission is a success, but the consequences extend far beyond military calculations. At 5:27 in the morning, Captain Yoshida begins moving through the ruins. He encounters survivors, burned, disoriented, silent. Many are unable to speak. Others are searching for family members. There is no organized evacuation, no medical structure. Hospitals have been destroyed or overwhelmed. The scale of casualties is beyond immediate comprehension. And yet, the official numbers will take days to estimate. What Japanese officers said in their reports reflects a shift in understanding. This was not seen as a conventional bombing. It was described as total urban destruction. One officer writes, "The city did not burn in parts. It burned as a whole." Another reports, "No defense measure we had could stop what we witnessed." These are not emotional reactions. They are operational assessments, cold conclusions drawn from failure. At 6:02 in the morning, imperial authorities begin assessing strategic impact. Tokyo is not just the capital. It is a center of administration, logistics, production coordination. Its destruction disrupts more than infrastructure. It disrupts command capability, and it sends a message that reaches far beyond Tokyo. Because this raid changes the nature of the air war over Japan. High-altitude precision bombing is no longer the primary method. Low-altitude incendiary attacks will now become standard. Other cities will face the same strategy. Osaka, Nagoya, Kobe, each with similar vulnerabilities, each now at risk. But this raises a critical question. Could anything have prevented this level of destruction? The answer is complex. Japanese air defenses were not designed for low-altitude mass incendiary raids. Urban planning did not prioritize fire resistance. Resources were already strained late in the war, and communication systems lacked redundancy. These factors combined into a perfect failure. At 6:35 in the morning, the fires continue to smolder. Smoke rises into the sky, visible for miles. Survivors begin moving, searching, counting, trying to understand what remains. But there is no clear answer, because the true cost of the night is still unfolding. Estimates will later suggest that over 100,000 people died in a single night, making this one of the deadliest air raids in history, more destructive than many battles, more immediate in its impact, and deeply significant in shaping the final months of the war in the Pacific. So what would you have done in this situation? Faced with an enemy that changed tactics overnight, with defenses that no longer worked, with a city built in a way that made survival uncertain. Could any decision have changed the outcome? By sunrise, Tokyo still exists, but not as it did before. It is a city transformed, not just physically, but psychologically. The belief in defense, in protection, in control, all of it has been broken. And as the smoke rises over the ruins, one reality becomes impossible to ignore. This was not just an attack on a city, it was a demonstration of what modern war had become. Total, unstoppable, and devastating beyond anything previously imagined.